Welcome to NCBA's Cattlemen's Call podcast with host Lane Nordland.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Cattlemen's Call podcast. Lane Nordland with you here today. It's been a busy fall for so many of us up in the northern tier of the country where I call home. The fall run is underway, a lot of shipping going on, cattle heading to the Midwest, and some snow finally falling in parts of the Rocky Mountain West that wildfires have just ravaged, particularly here in late summer and early fall. Some great relief for producers impacted by wildfire. And that's what we're going to talk about today is natural disaster, not wildfire in particular for this show, but the impact that hurricanes have had on the southeastern part of the nation. And we're going to be joined today by members of the Florida Cattlemen's Association. Alex Johns and Dale Carlton are joining us. They're producers there in Florida who have been impacted by the recent hurricanes in that region. Dale currently serves as the FCA president, and Alex is a past president of the association and a member of the Seminole Tribe of Florida as well. So, gentlemen, as you join us here on the podcast today, Dale, I'll start with you. How are things going with two hurricanes now in the rearview mirror? How are things for the operation and yourself?
Well, it's really going good. We got obviously some cleanup to do, and but as a whole, we on our family operations, we made out in pretty good shape with these two. A lot of people got a lot more water than we did. We experienced that in 2022 with Ian, where we had a couple feet of water, and there's people up in the north part of the north of us that are experiencing a lot of water damage more than wind damage. Still a lot of wind damage, but there's a lot of water sticking around.
Alex, for yourself, how are things shaking out here with things in the rearview mirror?
We're in pretty good shape ourselves. Had a little fence damage, some wind damage, quite a bit of water, but, a lot of our neighbors got a lot worse. So we've got all our stuff tidied up, and we're able to go out and help our neighbors now. So it's going to be a long cleanup process, but, thankfully we'll get through it.
No, well, again, neighbors helping neighbors. That's what we're about here in rural America. It doesn't matter where you live at or where your operation is at. Before we dive too far into our discussions around hurricane relief and rebuilding, Dale, I'll start with you on this question. Let's just talk about your background there in Florida in the cattle business and your family's involvement and what your operation, what you run down there.
Okay, I'm 8th generation Floridian, 6th generation rancher. My family's been in the business for a very long time. That's all I know. We have a cow-calf operation that we have places in 3 counties that are connected to each other, and we're a family business. My dad and mom, and there's myself and my sister, and I have 3 boys, and my sister has a boy and a girl, and well, they're actually grown, and everybody's involved. That's our story. We have, I think we have, I counted it up. There's about 11 of us that are all work together in one way or the other on the ranch.
Well, thanks for that insight. And Alex, I'll pose the same question for you.
Yes, sir. Member of the Seminole Tribe of Florida. Our family's about 4,500 members. We operate from north central Florida all the way to South Florida, several different counties. Mostly a cow-calf operation. We do got some farming interests, but mostly cow-calf. So been in Florida quite a long time.
Yep. Well, gentlemen, I thank you for joining us, and it's not fun to talk about natural disasters or when issues, throw off daily operations, but we appreciate you joining us here today because I think it's so important for all of our fellow cattle producers to hear, how things are going, how they can help, and know that they're not alone, say if wildfires impacting them up here in the Rocky Mountain West, or hurricane and rebuilding after that down in your neck of the woods. We had Hurricane Helene hit, and then Milton hit as well. So when that first round of hurricanes with Helene hit you all, what was that like, and what was the initial thoughts after the hurricane hit, and then knowing you had Milton on the way too? I guess what is it like preparing for a hurricane in cattle country?
There's quite a bit to do. You have to obviously get things tied down and hope and in their safe place, and open up enough pasture for your cattle to be able to let their natural instincts take over and find their safe place as well. And just then you get really ready to recover and to be able to help other people. And just, it's really one of those things where everybody comes together and works together. And that's really how we get through it.
And what's that like, though? I mean, I've been down in Florida on some ranches, and a lot different than our wide open pastures here in Montana. What is the prep like when you're trying to maybe locate or move cattle beforehand, and then after that hurricane hits or any storm? What is that like, and what's it like working with your neighbors and everybody coming together just to find cattle and make sure everything's accounted for?
I'll take this one, man. This is Alex. We've gotten pretty good at prepping for these things. It's mostly cleanup afterwards, but prepping, we're opening gates, making sure cattle have access to high ground, and they'll figure it out. They got pretty good instincts there. But afterwards is really where the work starts, and all the team players come together. Mostly we're trying to keep cattle off of highways, liability purposes, checking fences, boundary fences. First we go check, make sure everybody's alive and healthy. But after that, we just start riding fences, chainsawing our way in and out. A lot of times we're the first folks on the ground before first responders are there. We cut the trees out of the way and get the roads open where the paramedics can get down them. A lot of your ag folks, they own the equipment, the heavy equipment that can do all the pushing. So we get a bunch of chainsaws and guys together, and we do prep. All our ranches have plenty of fuel, plenty of water, plenty of power tools, plenty of equipment. Everything's moved up to high ground. So as soon as the storm hits, we're able to jump into equipment and go. And then after that, if typically, if it doesn't hit our home place very hard and we're able, we will travel to wherever the location is that it did hit, where other neighbors are going to be experiencing more issues, that we can go help them. I think during Helene, we were there 6 hours after the storm. The Cattlemen was on location 6 hours after the storm, and we were pushing roads out for EMS and the police to get in and out of communities, and trying to organize with our friends up there to make sure that they had everything they needed. So it's mostly cleanup for us. We've gotten pretty good at addressing them when they come. It's just, we don't know what we're dealing with after it's gone.
When Helene hit, does that water recede if you have whether it's rain or a little surge in the groundwater level? I guess what does that look like when you're looking at cleaning up? Does that water level stay pretty high, or is it just does it recede pretty fast, and then you're left to clean up what it did leave behind there on the ground in the open spaces?
They're all different. To be honest with you, Milton for us was a fairly dry storm. We got most of the rain prior. Helene was a wet storm. Go back to Ian, that was a super wet storm. Mm-hmm. But you'll find places where, if you get hit with a pile of rainwater and it's in low country, you could be neck deep in places. Milton was different. It seemed that where we were working at, the water got higher afterwards because all the rivers started filling up, and it took several days for the rivers to crest. So we continued to see flooding there. Places that were dry when we arrived were starting to be underwater when we left. So, we took some relocation of cattle and stuff in those areas, but every one of them seems to be a little bit different. Dale might want to add to that.
No, for sure. They're all been different, and we've had the opportunity to deal with several of them, and it seems like none of them are exactly the same for the same people. So that's part of the problem. It's part of the things that makes it difficult to prep too much, because we don't know exactly where it's going to hit. You know, we have an idea, but we don't know exactly who's going to be impacted. So you kind of have to wait for it to get through and deal with it then.
Now, obviously, watching the national news when Milton had hit and folks were looking at the damage, a lot of it was the leftover cleanup of folks piling all their tree limbs and everything else up in in their yards and street, cleaning up after Helene, and more of that damage was caused by their cleanup efforts. And so obviously I'm assuming that was kind of something you all experienced too when you're starting to clean up after those storms. How are things looking on your operation? And obviously it's always tough having to clean things up when you know you could be doing other things on the ranch, more important depending on the time of the year, but you got to be able to function. So I guess how are things for yourselves and maybe some of your fellow producers that got hit a little harder for both these hurricanes? What's the layout look like on the landscape?
Well, it basically pushes you back a month minimum, because you pretty much stop your normal day-to-day operation that's going on, and you got a storm to deal with. So we've had, actually, counting Debbie, you know, we've had 3 storms make direct hit in the last, Alex, 5 weeks, 6 weeks. 2 real close to the same place up in the Big Bend, and then Milton came across the middle of the state like it did.
Mm-hmm.
So it's one of those things. Each storm is different to get ready to do what we need to do.
I forgot about little Debbie there a few weeks ago too. Gosh darn, I tip my hat to you guys, that ranch down in that area. I've been able to tour down there at some different country, and obviously we have all of our different issues and nutrition and management of our cattle herds depending on where we call home. I guess when you're looking at animal health, what are some protocols that you put in place when you're starting to clean up and check on cattle? What are some things you've all learned when you're looking at these cattle and accounting for them and making sure they're all in tip-top shape?
Well, it's different in different areas once again. So let me go back to Milton. So if you got to the higher country where those cattle were at, as you can imagine, the only water access they had was well water. So if you don't have power, you don't have wells, cattle don't have water. So there's a lot of coordinating to haul fresh water to cattle, which is a job in itself. And then we do a lot of, accessing generators and getting generators hooked up to different well sites so they can pump water. If you get back down to our area, we have natural groundwater year round. And if we get 2 foot of rain, we got plenty of water. The issue then becomes, calving. We're right in the middle of calving season. Cows are dropping calves, and if they don't have anywhere dry to get, you lose a lot of calves, and the impact will be felt for a good year. We won't really know what the impact is until probably next calving season. If they did survive this one, did they breed back?
Yeah.
And nutrition is going to always be an issue after a storm because your grass gets pretty washy. There's several people that's having to feed hay now because all the grass basically flooded out. Any annual crops they planted are gone. It did a lot of damage to row crops. So it's, we're going to feel the impact for a long time. And also the pecans up in that area. I mean, they were devastated. There's probably not a pecan left on a tree up there. So it hurt them pretty good as well. Cotton, peanuts, hurt all those guys. So it's not just the ranchers. It hurt several different ag industries here.
And, you bring up just the cattle nutrition and the impact the stress has on our mama cows out there. I guess, are there some resources through state extension and whatnot too on maybe some studies of watching these cattle and just how different tropical storms and hurricanes and how that really does impact breed back and cattle health, but also, some strategies that producers can implement in trying to keep those cows as healthy as possible. Because again, this is a whole new area for me when thinking about cattle stress, but obviously it's so important for all you down there.
Yeah, Extension really jumped in. We learned a lot after Hurricane Michael. So Hurricane Michael came through in a Big Bend area and devastated that place. I think it was a Cat 5 when it hit, but it ruined it. And the aftermath, a month later, we were noticing cattle were dying, and it turned out, Extension got involved and was trying to figure out what was going on. Was it bad water? But it turned out that the cattle were turning to eating feed they wouldn't normally eat. A lot of it being toxic weeds. So we lost quite a few cattle up there. But Extension does put out, some papers on how to handle situations post hurricane, things about nutrition, stuff like that. But I want to kind of toot the Florida Cattlemen's Association's horn here, and Dale Carlton especially. So we've been doing storm recovery for past 7 or 8 years as an association. I think we really started during Hurricane Michael, and we started ramping up and getting a little more organized. And then Dale recently started a new committee. I think we call it disaster relief and response.
Yeah.
Justin White is the committee chair of it. He did a good job of rallying supplies and manpower together. And Pat Durden, the past president, started delegating, logistically where we should deploy to. We kind of, I don't want to toot our horn, but we kind of got to be a well-oiled machine. When these hurricanes blow through, we know where to move to, where to go, how to survive. You mentioned Hurricane Milton coming in after Helene. Well, when we were up there in Helene, nobody had any service, no news. We didn't even know another hurricane was coming. So we found out as soon as we got home, and everybody's telling us there's another one coming. We had to prep for another one. So, when you get to these storm areas, there's no power, there's no service, no cell service a lot of times. So it gets pretty difficult to communicate.
And that was going to be my next. I'll toot your horn for you for Florida Cattlemen. I mean, when you look at that too, I think so much of the populace and consumers, they don't understand. Yeah, the storm hits, but there's so much that goes into rebuilding fence, clearing stuff out. Again, we talked about animal health and nutrition, but just being able to have those resources. So when you're looking at just having these resources, whether it's financial or donations in feed or equipment, whatever it might be, Dale, can you maybe expand upon just the relationship building that has taken place in focusing on disaster rebuilding, and how important it is to have those relationships on the state and federal level, and also on the county level, but also just reaching out and seeing support from your fellow producers several states away as well?
Well, that's one of the reasons that I would toot our horn as an association too, and I'll take it all to our executive director, Mr. Hanley. He has unbelievable relationships scattered throughout our whole industry. He has unbelievable relationships scattered out through our state. And you get him and a few of us making a few phone calls, working together. And then you got anybody to do with ag, and definitely anybody to do with our industry, or also you're not even having to call them. They're wanting to know what they need to be able to do to help. I call that a blessing. And that's basically what, just get on the phone and everybody, it literally really brings the ag industry and the cattle industry, brings them together like we're supposed to be together. And it's just kind of a natural thing, the natural draw that happens.
And Alex, for yourself too, my family, we ranch on the Fort Belknap Indian Reservation up here. We're members of the Grovant Nation. From the Seminole tribe's perspective, what are some resources that they provide too in the work and the collaboration that takes place to help producers and tribal members across the state as well?
Well, they locally for the tribal members, we have several different services we provide. All the way from human health, sanitation, as well as fuel, generators, food, things like that. And our tribal council allows us, as soon as the storm is over and our family members are taken care of, the ability to go out and help our neighbors. And we're able to utilize our manpower and our equipment and some of our fuel and water food resources, things of that, to carry to these disaster areas. So our tribe works really well in cooperation with the Florida Cattlemen's Association and getting around. And we have tribal members scattered all over the United States and a lot in North Florida where these things hit. So once we get up there, we make sure our family members are taken care of, and then we start helping our neighbors again.
I'm going to jump in there, Lane. Our association there aren't words big enough to say how much we appreciate the Seminole tribe and what a job Alex does, how he brings the two together without taking advantage of either one. It's just a natural draw, and it's almost like a partnership that's turned into over the years to work together and to also realize that there's strength in numbers, and really strength in numbers of good people working together for the same cause. So Alex and the Seminole tribe deserve a big shout out and a lot of love.
Very well said, Dale. And you look at this too, and neighbors helping neighbors, getting everybody back and up and going in as fast a manner as possible. We do know that there is always programs on the federal level through USDA and other agencies. I guess when you look at some of these programs, I'm trying to think of they got such long acronyms. I'm not even going to try to share them all, but I guess what are some of those that have worked really well and are aiding producers, and what are some that maybe need a little work, and just the number of storms that have come through, and I guess what are your thoughts, and what are some of the advocacy you do in making sure that there is federal aid available for when natural disaster does strike?
Well, there are some good agencies, and we do get a lot of help. The one thing that the improvement needs to be is it needs to be able to be more streamlined. That is what we run into is there's been so many and so much at one time over the last 7 or 8 years that there's a backup on a lot of that assistance, and it's couple years, sometimes in Michael's case, 5 years before people got their disaster assistance, and that would be the biggest thing, that you end up getting it, but it takes a long time where you've already had to come out of the pocket to pay, and it's not going to say it's too late, but it kind of is sometimes. But that's the biggest hurdle that I think there is with the FSA and the USDA and all those programs that help, and they're very good, and I don't want to paint a negative picture about that, but it's just there's so many hoops to jump through to get it. That's the thing we got to get. We hope we can get fixed. And our commissioner, I read something today where he's actually working on getting some of that stuff streamlined, and it'll be hard. He's got to have a lot of support too.
Now, you mentioned the different sectors: cotton, pecans, poultry comes to mind too. I know, especially up north there in Georgia, a lot of poultry facilities were taken out in that storm, and also in the Carolinas. What are you hearing from your poultry colleagues in Florida, maybe those surrounding states, on the impact that these storms have had on poultry production, meaning protein in the consumer pipeline, and how quick they can rebuild? We know how fast the poultry industry can rebuild when they have to depopulate, when disease comes through, but I think it's just another factor of when their facilities are taken down as well. I guess, what are you hearing around that? Because I've had a lot of people ask me how the storms will impact the poultry protein input.
I'm gonna say in Florida it was a big impact on poultry from what we've seen. They lost their entire houses. Everything was gone. Chicken feathers everywhere, and barns collapsed and exploded. The areas we were in, there wasn't a chicken house standing. So it had to have a big impact on them. I haven't heard much, but I know they're in bad shape just like the rest of us are.
Well, again, we sympathize with all the producers out there impacted by this, and I know we're focusing on cattle, but we're all in agriculture, and we all get up and put our boots on, no matter what the day is, and our sympathies are with everybody. And I should mention to our friends listening, if you're wondering how you can help play a role in disaster relief, I would encourage you to check out the ncba.org/producer/disaster relief resources, or just Google NCBA Disaster Relief, because they have a great lineup for hurricane relief, the resources for producers impacted by those storms, or by wildfire, whatever that natural disaster can be. And they also have direct links to the state affiliates like the Florida Cattlemen's Association on how you can help these producers on the ground as well. And when we look at this, Dale, I guess what have been the number one things that producers, obviously, you're going out, you're helping, you're clearing the roads, helping people get medical attention, but what have been some of the biggest needs here this summer and fall that producers have really needed to help get back to normal?
Well, what the storm does, most of the damage it leaves is pretty labor intensive, and that's where a lot of it is. Like Alex said, most of us have some equipment and some stuff like that, but it's so much at one time that a normal size ranch crew would take. We can't hardly get cleaned up in between storms now, but it takes so much, and it overwhelms a lot of people up there in the Big Bend area. Some of the things that were sad to me, some older people, generational people, have been up there their whole life on their 400 or 500 acres that they have some cows, and they also have some hay and a crop, and they're talking about it's not worth it anymore, giving up, especially on the cow end of things. And that's heartbreaking when you love the industry like we do.
And Alex, from your perspective too, I guess, how do these storms make you think ahead and plan and look at different resources and making sure that you can be as prepared as possible when these storms do hit?
Well, the biggest thing I see from all the experience we've had with these storms is making sure your fence lines are pretty much void of trees.
Yeah.
The biggest damage is having trees laid down on your fence. But, we do keep our fence lines sprayed back. But, as Dale mentioned, you get up in North Florida, it's just forest. And there's a lot of tree damage and it takes a lot of work. And the biggest need we have is probably for labor. But there again, fence materials and probably short-term cattle feed. But fencing, is so expensive, and that's what a lot of these older folks are looking at is the cost of repairing the fence, replacing the fence, and the labor to do it. And sadly, some of them are just, bowing in and saying that they're probably done after this one. They just get hit back to back and can't get cleaned up from the last one. So it's sad to see. We do what we can with our small crews, but we have to go home to our families and take care of our stuff as well. And it's going to be a long cleanup process. But if any of those donations that come in, they're put in good hands with NCBA, and we also have the Florida Cattlemen's Association. We take donations here, and we've had a lot of different folks, private folks, donate money. And that's a big help, especially short term when we first get into this. We don't really know what we've got. We have no stockpile. So we're trying to rally together and find materials where we can get them and get them paid for. And those folks that make those private donations, it goes a long ways.
Now I'm curious, what is your normal fencing material? Obviously up here we're T-posts and all those 120-year-old cedar posts are specialties around here that our forefathers put in the ground. But a mile of fence, it could be $15,000-$20,000 here in Montana, where I call home, depending on the terrain and materials needed. What's it cost down there roughly to put in a mile of fence, and what do you use on those fence lines down there in some of that swampy country?
Yeah, I mean, we're similar as far as cost goes. It's according to what kind of clearing has to be done.
Mm-hmm.
That cost would be without clearing. But you get up in North Florida, I mean, a big D8 bulldozer can't move some of those trees. So it's it's a lot of hand labor. So it takes quite a bit to get some of them fence lines cleared where you can actually string a new fence. But we're primarily barbed wire down here and pressure treated posts,
mm-hmm.
and the cost of everything's up. So yeah, it's a high cost of fencing for sure.
Now, looking ahead, what are some maybe looking at some of the positive things out there? I know we're focused on the disaster and rebuilding right now, but what are some other things the Florida Cattlemen's Association is up to help grow the presence of the cattle industry there in Florida and of course one of the fastest growing states, of course, in the nation. But what are some things that you guys are working on and looking towards the future of the cattle industry and the oldest cattle industry in the U.S. as well?
Well, one push we're making this year is our membership. I'll give you a little history on that. In 2019, we had a dues increase, a much needed dues increase. We needed some more staff. We needed some seats at some tables like the water management district places, and we needed to upgrade that. And so we hadn't had a dues increase in 20 years. We increased our dues, and then right behind that, COVID hit. And it really put us, it knocked a hole in our membership by about 850 members. So with that being said, this year we stopped the bleeding. We got it headed back in the right direction. It'll take a couple years to get us back where we were, and hopefully we're hoping to increase that. And right now on our government level, we have an opportunity to be in real good shape. Our Commissioner of Agriculture, Wilton Simpson, he's a farmer. He's a chicken farmer, and he has some cows too. The soon-to-be Senate president is a ag guy too. He's mainly citrus, but he's for all ag. We got pretty good support. Ag does in Tallahassee right now, and hopefully, with everything going on with the disasters and stuff, having people that have a heart for ag is definitely a huge help to us. So the main thing that we're working on, we feel like there's strength in numbers, and we need, and the game and the governmental part of things is bigger than it's ever been. So those are the main things we got going on right now.
And I'll add to that. Something that I seen when we left Milton and Helene is that just the goodwill of all the Florida Cattlemen crews that showed up. We had crews all over. It could be a 2-man crew or a 10-man crew, but we were scattered in several counties, and just the goodwill that these guys was putting forward. They were helping people in neighborhoods that didn't even own a cow or a chicken. If the person needed help, they helped them. But those people seem to be buying memberships as well, and they're also trying to recruit other people because they've seen what Florida Cattlemen Association does when they show up. So I want to just thank all those guys that were out there doing work for just your average Joe and getting their lifestyle back in somewhat normal.
Now I'm looking at your convention website. That's in June, and is your slogan for the convention this year "Loyal to the Land"? Am I reading that right?
Yes, sir. That actually, past President Alex Johns started a hashtag thing. He kind of got our association kicked off with social media into things, which has been a huge asset and a very good improvement since then. But as each incoming president has come up with their own slogan or theme, and "Loyal to the Land" is mine for this year, and it actually started at convention on Thursday night. So that's our yearly slogan or hashtag or theme or whatever you want to call it.
I think that's one of the best themes or slogans I've seen for an agriculture association in quite a long time, because I mean, just about our conversation here today, we're loyal to the land, we're loyal to our neighbors, we're loyal to our cattle and in the industry. So again, a lot going on, a lot of rebuilding, a lot of sweating left to do too. Not only do you have to clean up after 2 storms, you have to lobby, you have to stay in business. And again, Florida Cattlemen's Association, Jim Hanley and the team there, of course, on the staff, doing a fine job of being a voice for all the producers there in Florida as well. Gentlemen, one year, I want to come down to the convention there. That looks like a lot different than our Montana Stock Growers Convention during December, when it's usually 20 below zero. That looks pretty nice down there on the beach where you guys have convention meetings.
It's not any fun. You wouldn't enjoy it. I tell you what, if you come, we'll get you a room.
All right. Well, I'll My wife might have to. I don't think she'd allow me to go on that one without her. But we'll put that one on the schedule maybe for 2025. But Dale and Alex, we talked a lot about what you guys saw, the rebuilding efforts. Just anything else you would just like to share with your fellow cattle producers tuning in to the podcast today?
I would just say, if you're in the cattle industry and you see a neighbor in need, just be willing to lend a hand. I know if the Seminole tribe needed help, Dale and all the cattlemen would be there to help us. So, it's just we're all one family and we're all here to help each other. So let's just keep doing what we do.
I'll echo Alex. I'm a firm believer that there's strength in numbers. The more of us like-minded people banding together, the better we are, the more we get done. And also stay loyal to your land.
Well, gentlemen, thank you for joining us here today. I know you got a busy few months ahead of you, and we look forward to seeing you down in San Antonio for CattleCon 25. That's the 4th through the 6th of February. A little promotion for that event as well. Get registered, get your housing. That's all can be found at ncba.org/producers. I had to say it so many times on Cattlemen to Cattlemen the other day. I probably didn't get that right. So I'll make sure and have the correct details in the podcast description for convention, but also the disaster relief as well, friends. But with that, Alex and Dale, thanks for joining us here today.
All right. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
All right, friends. Thanks for answering the Cattleman's Call. I'm Lane Nordlund. We'll catch you next time.
Thanks for tuning in to NCBA's Cattlemen's Call podcast with Lane Nordlund. For more information, visit ncba.org and make sure to subscribe to the podcast today.